The water was rising fast, but Jackson Cole had one arm wrapped around his daughter and the other stretched toward the stranger stranded on the curb. "Step here careful, it's slippery," he called out, his boots already soaked through from the flooded crosswalk. The woman hesitated, heels in one hand, her designer coat clinging to her in the rain. She didn't look like she belonged on this side of town, not with that kind of bag on her shoulder, or the way she stared down at the water like it was personally offending her. "I can't," she started, voice shaky. "You'll be fine," Jackson said. "Just trust me." She did. He lifted her like she weighed nothing, balancing her against his chest as he kept his daughter tucked in tight with the other arm. The woman gasped when the cold water hit her legs, but Jackson pushed forward through the current until they reached the dry sidewalk. The woman clutched his shoulder, breathless. "That was wow, thank you." "You're welcome," Jackson said, adjusting the little girl in his arms. "You okay, honey?" Harper nodded, still wide-eyed. "She almost fell in." Jackson turned back to the woman. She was drenched, but she looked more annoyed than shaken. Her long black hair clung to her cheeks, and her red lipstick was somehow still perfect. "Do you need a ride or something?" he asked. "I don't think another cab's coming through here anytime soon." She gave a breathy laugh. "I was supposed to be at a meeting 10 minutes ago." "I don't think that's happening." Her voice was smooth, but something about the way she looked at Harper softened everything sharp about her. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Harper," the girl said proudly. The woman smiled. "Hi, Harper." "I'm Kaia." "Kaia," Jackson repeated, then looked down at her bare feet. "You're gonna freeze. There's a diner 2 blocks that way. We can walk you there." She raised an eyebrow. "You sure you've already done enough? Trust me, we're wet anyway." They walked together through the rain. Jackson held Harper with one arm and offered Kaia his coat, which she refused at first until Harper insisted. The diner was warm and smelled like burnt toast and fresh coffee. They got a booth near the window. Harper, now wrapped in Jackson's hoodie, colored on a kid's menu while Kaia sipped hot tea with both hands. "So," Kaia said, eyeing Jackson over the rim of her mug, "you rescue women from floods regularly, or was I just lucky?" Jackson chuckled. "You're definitely the first billionaire I've carried through a street." Kaia choked on her tea. He looked over, amused. "You think I don't recognize that bag? That's a $20,000 purse. I saw a lady on TV cry when it got scratched once." Kaia grinned, shaking her head. "Okay, fine. I'm not exactly broke, but I didn't expect someone to notice that." "Hard not to," he said, then added, "I'm a contractor, been slow lately, single dad, I notice a lot." She looked at Harper. "How old is she?" 6. "She loves dinosaurs and pancakes and thinks every grown-up should carry snacks." Kaia leaned closer. "Honestly, that last one's not wrong," Harper beamed. "Do you have snacks?" Jackson gave her a look. "Harper," Kaia laughed. "A real one this time. It was strange." She looked like someone who belonged in an office on the top floor of a skyscraper, not sitting in a booth with a worn-out dad and his daughter. But she didn't seem rushed to leave. Jackson didn't ask too much, didn't pry. He didn't ask why someone like her was walking through a storm without a driver, or why she looked like she hadn't slept. She didn't offer either. The check came, and Jackson reached for it automatically. Kaia stopped him. "I've got it. You sure?" "Pretty sure I still owe you for the rescue mission." He hesitated, but nodded. "Thanks." Outside, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. Kaia stood on the sidewalk, shoes still in her hand. "I can call my driver from here." Jackson nodded. "All right." There was a pause. She looked at him like she wanted to say something else, but didn't. Then Harper tugged her sleeve. "Are you gonna come back?" Kaia blinked. "Come back. Daddy makes the best pancakes on Sundays." Jackson turned red. Kaia smiled. "I'll think about it." They watched her climb into a sleek black car that pulled up seconds later. The windows were tinted, the driver wore a suit, and the moment she was inside, it pulled away without a sound. Jackson stared after it, still holding Harper's hand. "Do you think she liked the pancakes idea?" Harper asked. He smiled, tousling her hair. "I think she liked a lot more than that." But what he didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that Kaia Whitmore hadn't smiled like that in months. And as her car turned onto the expressway, she was still thinking about the man who carried her through the storm without knowing her name, and how, somehow, she already wanted to see him again. Kaia didn't even make it through the lobby before she kicked off her heels and dropped her soaked coat into the arms of a startled concierge. The marble floors of the Whitmore Tower glistened beneath the harsh overhead lights, too pristine and cold after the warmth of that worn-out diner booth. "Miss Whitmore," the concierge began, "your father's been asking. Tell him I'll call later." She didn't wait for a response. The elevator doors closed behind her with a soft hiss, sealing her inside a chrome capsule that smelled faintly of lavender polish and tension. She pressed the button for the penthouse and leaned back, her mind not on the looming board meeting she'd missed, or the deal her father would no doubt tear into her over. All she could think about was the man with the steady hands and the tired eyes. Jackson. The way he hadn't asked a single thing of her, hadn't even blinked when he recognized her designer bag. That quiet confidence. That little girl Harper who looked at her like she wasn't some headline or heiress, but just a regular person worth inviting to pancakes. The elevator doors slid open to a penthouse lined with glass and silence. No staff tonight, she told them to take the weekend off. She dropped her bag on the kitchen island, ignoring the blinking light on the landline phone. She already knew who it was. Her father had been calling for hours. Instead, she walked barefoot to the window, watching the city lights pulse below. Somewhere out there, Jackson was probably putting Harper to bed, maybe reading to her, maybe doing laundry or fixing a leak. Men like him didn't have the luxury of silence and glass towers. And yet, somehow, she'd never felt more grounded than she had in that booth, sipping cheap tea and laughing for the first time in weeks. The next morning, Jackson was halfway through red-eyeing a bathroom floor when Harper came bounding in, her backpack almost bigger than she was. "Daddy, do you think she'll come?" He looked up from the grout with a sigh. "Who?" Harper tilted her head. "Kaia." He wiped his hands on his jeans. "Honey, she probably has 100 things to do today. But she said she'd think about it." She did. That should have ended it, but Harper didn't move. She stood in the doorway, hopeful and certain in a way only 6-year-olds could be. Jackson shook his head. "Tell you what. If she shows up, you can pick the pancakes, chocolate chip or blueberry." Her grin stretched wide. "Both." The knock came 3 hours later. He didn't recognize the car, sleek but discreet, parked a little too neatly at the curb, but when the door opened, there she was. Kaia, in jeans and a white blouse rolled at the elbows, holding a paper bag in one hand and a box of strawberries in the other. "I brought syrup," she said, breathless. Jackson blinked. "You came?" "I told Harper I'd think about it. Turns out I couldn't stop thinking." He stepped aside to let her in. The entryway was small, the walls a little scuffed, the scent of lemon cleaner faint in the air. She didn't seem to notice, or maybe she didn't care. Harper squealed when she saw her and launched into a hug. Kaia crouched to meet her, careful not to crush the strawberries. "I brought whipped cream too," she whispered like it was a secret. Jackson stood behind them, arms crossed, watching the two of them like they were from different galaxies that suddenly made sense together. In the kitchen, Kaia unpacked the bag real maple syrup, a carton of fresh raspberries, even a tiny jar of cinnamon butter. Jackson raised an eyebrow. "You know we have syrup, right? Not the good kind, and anyway, I had my driver stop at the market." He nodded slowly. "You do this often?" "Crash strangers' kitchens with gourmet condiments. This is a first." They cooked together, Harper on a stool, stirring batter while Kaia sliced fruit and Jackson managed the griddle. The air filled with the smell of vanilla and melting butter, and for a while, it felt like something close to normal. Except it wasn't. Because Jackson couldn't stop watching how easily Kaia moved in his kitchen, how she didn't flinch at the crumbs or the cracked handle on the fridge. It made him nervous. After breakfast, Harper dragged Kaia to the living room to show her drawings. Jackson stayed behind, cleaning up, listening to their voices float in and out of the hallway. "You drew all these?" "Yep, this one's a T-Rex, but I made her pink. I love her. She looks fierce. She's a girl. Girls can be scary too." Jackson smiled to himself. Later, when Harper went down for her nap, Kaia lingered in the kitchen doorway, eyes scanning the photos taped haphazardly to the fridge. Jackson leaned on the counter, arms folded. "You really didn't have to come." "I wanted to." He watched her carefully. "Why?" Kaia's expression shifted, something vulnerable flickering beneath it. Because last night, for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was being watched or measured or expected to act a certain way. I just felt safe. Jackson didn't move. You don't seem like someone who needs saving. Maybe not, but that doesn't mean I don't want to stop running. He looked at her then, really looked, past the clothes and the polish, past the name he'd heard whispered in headlines. She looked tired beneath it all, tired and honest. You always bring maple syrup when you're trying to trust someone, Kaia smiled faintly. Only the real ones. He stepped closer, and for a moment the air between them stilled. She didn't pull away. You should know, he said quietly. This isn't some fantasy. I can't take you to Paris or buy you yachts. Kaia's gaze didn't waver. I've already had Paris. I'd rather have pancakes I don't have to eat alone. And just like that, something shifted again, subtle but certain. The lines between their worlds blurred, and neither of them tried to draw them back. Kaia leaned against the doorframe of Jackson's garage, arms folded as she watched him work beneath the hood of a battered old pickup. A faded blue tarp had been pulled back, revealing rust along the fender and a missing headlight. The air smelled of motor oil and dust, and a small radio perched on a shelf hummed low jazz. You fix this thing often? She asked, stepping over a coiled extension cord. Jackson didn't look up. Every other weekend. It's my brother's. He left it here before he deployed. I keep it running in case he ever comes back for it. Kaia's expression shifted. He's military, Army. Jackson straightened, wiping his hands on a frayed towel, stationed overseas. Communications have been spotty this year, she hesitated. That must be hard, not knowing. It is, he said simply, tossing the towel aside. But I've learned not to wait around hoping. I just do what I can. Kaia looked at the truck, then back at him. You always carry that much weight and still show up for strangers in the rain. He gave a half laugh, one that didn't reach his eyes. I've had worse days. Kaia stepped further inside, her heels echoing softly on the concrete. I didn't come just for pancakes, she said. Jackson raised an eyebrow. No, I came because I needed to do something that wasn't about stock options or press releases. I needed to see what it felt like to show up for someone without a reason. He leaned against the workbench, arms crossed. You don't owe me anything, Kaia. I know, she said, voice steady, but I want to be here. I want to know what this looks like when it's not just a one-off visit. Jackson looked at her a long moment. You ever used a socket wrench? Her brows lifted. Is that a serious question? I'm just saying, if you're trying to escape boardrooms, you might as well get your hands dirty. Kaia glanced at the rusted tool chest, then back at him. Fine. But if I break a nail, I'm blaming you. By the time Harper returned from the neighbor's house where Jackson had arranged a playdate so he could work uninterrupted, the garage smelled like burnt rubber and Kaia's hands were streaked with grease. Harper ran straight to her. You were here the whole time, Kaia crouched to hug her. I was helping your dad with the truck. Harper looked at her hands. You look like a mechanic now, Kaia grinned. Don't tell anyone, it'll ruin my reputation. As the afternoon wore down, they sat on the porch steps with lemonade. Kaia tucked her legs under her and watched Harper chase a butterfly across the dry patch of grass. Jackson sat beside her, quiet. She's lucky to have you, Kaia said. She deserves more than I've been able to give. Maybe. But she looks at you like you hung the moon. Jackson didn't respond right away. Her mom left when she was 3, said she wasn't cut out for it. I've been trying to make up for both of us ever since. Kaia turned toward him. You don't have to make up for anything. You're raising her with love. That's never not enough, he studied her. Why do you care? Because I've spent my whole life around people who move money from one place to another and call it meaning. You and Harper, you're real. You're not trying to impress anyone. I don't have the time or the energy to impress anyone. Exactly, she said softly. They sat in silence, the kind that didn't demand to be filled. The sun dipped low behind the fence, casting long shadows across the yard. Then Kaia stood and brushed off her jeans. I should go. I've got a meeting early tomorrow, something about a merger I'm pretending to understand. Jackson rose with her. Want me to walk you out? Yes. The car was parked at the curb again, but the driver stayed inside this time. Kaia turned to him before reaching for the door. I'm not asking for promises, she said, but if I asked you to dinner next weekend, would that be weird? Only if you made me wear a tie, she smiled. Noted, he stepped closer. You sure you want to keep crossing this line? Our lives don't exactly line up. I don't want our lives to line up, I want them to collide. He didn't kiss her, not yet, but she held his gaze like she was memorizing it. Then I'll see you next weekend, she said, and slipped into the car without looking back. Inside the house, Harper was at the window, her nose pressed to the glass. Is she coming back? She asked. Jackson smiled faintly. Yeah, I think she is. That night, Kaia stared at her phone, ignoring texts from her assistant and her father. She opened a different app instead, scrolling through listings. Not for clothes or vacations, but for community centers. Ones that needed funding. Ones that could use a name behind them. She didn't know exactly what she was doing. But for the first time, she didn't need a reason to care about something outside her world. She just needed to start. Jackson had never owned a blazer until that Saturday. It wasn't new he'd borrowed it from his neighbor, who had worn it to his cousin's wedding 3 years ago, but he'd taken the time to steam out the wrinkles and polish his boots. Harper had insisted on helping him pick the shirt. She'd chosen a pale blue one because she said it brought out his dad eyes, whatever that meant. Kaia had sent a car. He hadn't expected that. It wasn't flashy, but it was sleek enough to make him check his collar twice before climbing in. The driver didn't speak much, just nodded and handed him a small card with the name of the restaurant written in gold script. Jackson didn't recognize it, but he knew it wasn't the kind of place you brought coupons to. The restaurant sat at the top of a building with a view that stretched into the clouds. The host greeted him by name and led him to a table near the window, where Kaia was already seated. She was wearing black. Simple. Elegant. Nothing sparkled, but everything about her drew his eyes. She stood when she saw him, and instead of offering her hand, she reached for his. You're early, she said. I didn't want to keep you waiting. She smiled gently. You clean up well. He glanced around. You sure they're gonna let me stay? I think I'm bringing down the average net worth in here. You're with me, she said, so you're covered. The waiter brought water in tall glasses and menus that didn't list prices. Jackson tried not to react when he read the words saffron reduction next to the lamb. Kaia watched him over the rim of her glass. You ever been somewhere like this? Only in movies. He looked out the window. Why here? Because I wanted to bring you into my world just once, not to impress you, to show you I trust you with it. Jackson leaned back. You don't owe me your world. No, but I want you in it. He considered that. You ever been to a high school gymnasium filled with folding chairs and the smell of popcorn and sweat? Kaia blinked. Can't say I have. Harper's spring play is next month. She's a tree. Kaia's lips curved. I would love to see that, they ordered. The food came out on plates like artwork, tiny portions, perfectly placed. Jackson didn't know what half of it was, but Kaia explained each dish without sounding like she was showing off. When he asked how she knew so much, she told him about the years she'd spent shadowing her mother through charity events and diplomatic dinners. She used to say food was a language. You can tell a lot about a person by how they eat, Kaia said. Jackson looked at his plate. What does it say if I'm still hungry? Kaia laughed. That you're honest. When dessert came, she didn't even look at the menu. Chocolate soufflé, she told the waiter. 1, 2 spoons. After dinner, they walked to the rooftop garden above the restaurant. The wind was cool but not biting, and the city lights spread out around them like a sea of stars. Kaia leaned on the railing, eyes closed for a moment. This is the first night in months I haven't had to think about meetings or headlines or who's trying to outmaneuver me, she said quietly. Jackson stood beside her, hands in his pockets. Do you ever think about walking away from it? She opened her eyes. Sometimes. But then I remember the people who work for me, the ones who rely on the company to keep their lights on. I'm trying to steer it somewhere better. He nodded. That's a lot to carry. I've been carrying it alone for too long. She looked at him. You don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know that I want this to be real. He turned toward her. It already is. They rode down the elevator in silence, not awkward, heavy with meaning. At the curb, her driver waited with the door open. Jackson hesitated. Kaia looked up at him. Come with me, he blinked. Where? Back to my place. I want to show you something. Harper's with the neighbor until 10. I told them I'd text if I was running late. Kaia held out her hand. Then come. The penthouse was quiet when they entered. Kaia didn't turn on the full lights, just a single lamp that cast a soft glow across the living room. She walked to the far wall and opened a cabinet. Inside, behind protective glass, sat 3 paintings. Abstract, vivid, chaotic, but beautiful. "My mother painted those," she said. "Before she died, no one knows I kept them. The board thinks I donated everything." Jackson stepped closer. "The colors were wild, untamed. They're incredible." She painted when she couldn't sleep. Said it helped her remember who she was before the world told her who she had to be. Kaia looked at him. "I think I'm just now figuring out who I am." Jackson turned to her. "I think you already know. You just needed someone to remind you you're allowed to be that person." She took a breath. "Stay a little longer," he did. They sat on the couch, her head against his shoulder, the city blinking quietly outside. No words, just presence. When he finally stood to leave, she walked him to the door. But before he opened it, she reached for his hand. "I want Harper to be part of my life," she said. "Not because it's convenient, because she matters to you, and you matter to me." Jackson studied her. "This isn't a fling for you." "No," she said. "This is the first thing that's ever felt like home." He nodded slowly. "Then we'll take it one step at a time. But I'm not going anywhere." 3 weeks later, Kaia sat in a metal folding chair between Jackson and a woman with a toddler on her lap, clapping as Harper took a bow in her cardboard tree costume. She looked completely out of place in her tailored coat and silk scarf, but she didn't care. Afterward, Harper ran straight into her arms. "Did you see me?" Kaia laughed. "You lit up the stage, sweetheart." Jackson watched them, his heart stretching in ways he hadn't known it could. And when Kaia turned to him, her eyes brighter than ever, he reached for her hand and didn't let go. Behind them, the cafeteria buzzed with chatter and spilled juice boxes. But for a moment, everything else faded. He'd carried a stranger through a flood. And she had carried him into a life he never knew he could hope for. The morning sun filtered through the open window of Jackson's kitchen, casting long golden lines over the table where Kaia sat barefoot, pulling her hair into a low ponytail. She wore one of Jackson's flannel shirts, rolled at the sleeves, and watched Harper attempt to balance a spoon on her nose while munching on toast. "You're cheating," Kaia said, raising an eyebrow. "No, I'm concentrating," Harper declared, crossing her eyes dramatically. Jackson walked in carrying a toolbox. "I'm heading to the Ramirez job site, back by 3. He leaned down to kiss Harper's forehead, then paused by Kaia, brushing her jaw with his thumb before kissing her too. "I'll make dinner," Kaia said, looking up at him. He hesitated. "You sure? Just because I'm terrible at breakfast doesn't mean I can't redeem myself. You've got the kitchen and Harper's taste buds in your hands," he teased. Harper raised a hand. "I like chicken nuggets." "Noted," Kaia laughed. "But we're going slightly more advanced tonight." After Jackson left, Harper turned to her. "Are you going to be here all the time now?" Kaia kept her voice even. "Would you want that?" Harper nodded. "Yeah, you know how to braid better than Daddy." Kaia smiled, but her chest tightened. That afternoon, while Harper was napping and the sound of birds drifted in from the backyard, she sat at Jackson's table with her laptop open and her phone buzzing beside her. She ignored the missed calls from her father. Instead, she opened a draft of the proposal she had been quietly working on for 2 weeks, a full transition of her role at Whitmore & Co. She wasn't walking away entirely. She didn't believe in abandoning things she'd helped build, but it was time to redefine how she led. Less from the top floor, more from the ground. She saved the document and shut her laptop just as Jackson came in, brushing sawdust off his shirt. "Smells like garlic in here," he said, sniffing dramatically. "That would be my attempt at pasta primavera," she replied, wiping her hands on a towel. "And before you ask, yes, I used real vegetables. No, nothing came from a delivery bag." He peeked into the pan, then looked at her. "You're full of surprises. I've got one more," she said, untangling an envelope from beneath a cookbook. "This came today." He took it, frowning. "What is it?" "Open it." Inside was a folded letter with an official-looking seal, his brow furrowed as he read. "You donated to the community center," he asked slowly. "Not just donated, I funded the renovation, the one you told me about. The place you said Harper used to go before they shut down the after-school program." Jackson stared at her. "I talked to the director," she continued. "They're naming the new wing after your brother, and they'd like you to help with the design plans." He set the letter down. "Kaia, why would you do this?" "Because you matter, and because it's not just money if it means something." He crossed the room and pulled her into his arms. "You didn't have to prove anything to me." "I wasn't trying to," she said against his chest. "I just wanted to be part of your world too." They ate outside that night, string lights glowing above the porch, Harper twirling in circles in the grass with spaghetti sauce on her chin. After Kaia tucked her into bed, she came back downstairs to find Jackson waiting by the door, a small box in his hand. He looked nervous. "I know we haven't done things the traditional way," he began, "and I don't have a yacht or a penthouse view, but I've got this house. I've got Harper. And I've got love I didn't know I had left to give until you came crashing into our lives." She stepped closer, her breath catching. "I don't need a ceremony tomorrow," he said, "or next month, but I want you here in this home with us, as part of this family." He opened the box. Inside was a simple gold ring, delicate but strong. No diamonds, no flash, just a single engraved word inside, always. Kaia looked up at him, her eyes shining. "I've lived in towers, Jackson, but this is the first time I've ever felt like I'm truly home." He slipped the ring on her finger, and she kissed him like she was anchoring herself to the earth. Months later, the front of the newly renovated community center gleamed under the afternoon sun. Children ran through the halls. There were art supplies stacked in every corner, and Harper's dinosaur drawings had been framed and hung in the reading room. Jackson stood beside Kaia at the dedication ceremony, his hand resting on the small swell of her stomach that hadn't yet been announced, but couldn't be hidden much longer. The crowd quieted as the ribbon was cut, and Kaia leaned close to whisper, "I haven't told the board yet," he grinned. "They'll survive." "I'm not going back," she said. "Not like before. I'll consult, I'll invest, but I want to be here with you, with Harper." "With this baby, you're sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." Harper came bounding over with a juice box and tugged on Kaia's hand. "Come see the mural. I painted a rocket ship." Kaia laughed and let herself be pulled away, her fingers still linked with Jackson's until the last second. Later that night, back at the house, they curled up on the couch while Harper slept down the hall, and Kaia rested her head on Jackson's chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart. "I used to think I had to be everything for everyone," she said quietly. "You don't," he whispered. "You just have to be here." She looked up at him. "This is the life I never knew I needed," he kissed her forehead, "and now it's yours, ours." Outside, the wind rustled the trees, the porch light flickered once, then steadied. Inside, wrapped in warmth, love, and a future they had built together from the most unexpected of beginnings, Kaia and Jackson held each other close, and they never let go.